Welcome to the Auto Guide Show, brought to you by eBay Motors. This week we have a lot to cover. We talk about a sibling rivalry. I say it for 24 hours for pretty much nothing, and Kyle drives a bunch of new cars. But first, before we get to that, here's a word from our sponsor. eBay Motors is here for the ride. Your elbow grease, fresh installs, and a whole lot of love transformed 100,000 miles and a body full of rust into a driveway entirely its own. Brake kits, LED headlights, whatever you need, eBay Motors has it. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. All right, welcome back. Let's just get right into it because we got a lot to talk about today. So first up, this was sort of a spin-off of our super comparison from a couple weeks ago, but we did a head-to-head between the Chevrolet Trax and the Chevrolet Trailblazer because even though they are different, they compete in a very similar segment size-wise.
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit on that episode whenever the main comparison aired, but it's nice to dive a little bit deeper into these because I know that when we were heading into this, at least I'm not sure about you, Mike, but I know for me, I was really questioning what the purpose was in the Trailblazer now, outside of all-wheel drive, because I find the Trax really impressive. So yeah, it was interesting to spend more time with both of them. Although for anyone watching, good luck figuring out which one is which in that picture.
Yeah. Yeah, like we talked about it then, and that's basically what we say again, is the Trailblazer offers a more premium, slightly more usable interior. The problem is if they were the only two, great, it makes sense. But when you throw in the Encore GX and the Invista, it's sort of like, I almost feel like there should be the Trax and the Encore GX. So you get like your premium all-wheel drive SUV, or you get your, yeah. But I mean, having four choice is always great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I see your point because, yeah, like you might as well have the two extremes. Although we did ding the Buick, the Encore GX in that comparison because it's so pricey. And it doesn't necessarily feel nicer than the Trailblazer in my mind. It had some slightly nicer materials like with its seats, but otherwise it's more or less the same kind of thing. And I liked the Trailblazer enough. It follows more of a traditional blueprint for that category now. But yeah, for me, it's still, the Trax is such a good deal, and it's so car-like that as long as I didn't need all-wheel drive, I think I'd just suck up the slightly cheaper interior and lack of toys, because why not?
Yeah, and I mean, that is it. If you take away all-wheel drive out of the equation, it is, the interior is not quite as nice. The rear seat space is different, more headroom in the Trailblazer, more legroom in the Trax. It's kind of a wash. And then cargo's a bit, because the Trax is really just a car, so it's a shorter hatch, but it's pretty deep, whereas the Trailblazer is regular. Someone commented already on the video that if the Trax offered a rear wheel electric assist, sort of like the Corolla and Corolla Cross do for a hybrid, they're like, I'd have no reason to want to get the Trailblazer. And I thought, you know what, that's actually a pretty smart idea, because you put a little single motor back there, you just need a tiny battery pack that just, helps you up to whatever 60 miles an hour, and then so
yeah,
if you're out there, GM, you can have that idea for free. It wasn't mine anyway. All right, moving on to, speaking of Toyota hybrids, you drove the new Venza. No, wait, nope, not the Venza, the Crown Signia.
The Camry Cross. Wait, no. Yes, I drove this. So actually, this was my second time driving it, because this picture was taken from Ajax Eco Run, which I did this week, which maybe I'll talk about a little bit later in the podcast. But I did drive it a while back at the National First Drive in California 2 months ago. But I was given the very fortunate opportunity to deliver this to Montreal. So I drove it 300-ish miles from Toyota headquarters there. And so got a lot of time behind the wheel. And you know what? I like it. It's very good at what it does. I'm just confused by it.
It's like me trying to learn a new language.
Yeah.
Well, aside from being confused by it, well, actually, sort of in that same vein, this isn't a knock on Toyota at all, but it's the industry. Everything has those long, thin daytime running lights on the front now, and like pods below for headlights. And it's like, you take the badge off this, is it a Subaru? Is it a Hyundai? Is it a Genesis? Like, what is that? Like, there's so many now that you need to see what the badge is. Like, oh, that's what it is.
I see what you mean. I do like Toyota's new, I think they call it hammerhead design language. And so with it arching up like that over the front, and it's got sort of like an integrated front wing kind of look going on, I do like that, and I think it's pretty easy to identify now. The back is, in my mind, the weakest part of the Crown Signia, because if you took off the badge, oh, it has a full width tail light. Cool. So does literally everything nowadays. It's very wagon-like. To the point that Toyota's designers even refer to it as wagon-like when I was doing the walk around. So that's impressive. It's very nice inside, because we've been in the Crown sedan. It's pretty much the same thing inside.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, it's very nice. It's just Toyota doesn't plan on selling many. They plan on selling even fewer of this than they did of the Venza, which wasn't really a hit. So I'm confused, because the name Crown is their flagship sedan, but here it's just one of 9 SUVs, and it's right in the middle of the family. So I feel like if we had, sorry, someone is revving a very poorly muffled car downstairs. If we had the hybrid max powertrain, that'd be cool. And I wish this was a little cheaper. The Outback is its main competitor, and that ends where this begins price-wise.
That was like the Venza. I mean, the Outback was its closest competitor. It was like a hybrid alternative, but they always seem a little smaller, a little pricier. But oh well, it's another Crown.
It's swanky. If you want something Outback size, but you want something that's nicer, but don't want a luxury car, this is a very easy car to get along with.
So you want a Lexus, but you don't want a Lexus. You get the Crown Signia.
Yeah,
I got you. All right, moving on. As we said, well, if you saw last week, I was in Germany at the Nurburgring, and at that time it was, I don't remember what day it was. Oh, it was Friday. It was qualifying still, so the race hadn't even started. So the race started at 4 p.m. their time, and it was super exciting for the first 2.5 hours. Even the commentators who watch every year said, like, this is some of the best action they ever saw. This, not even just this early, but period. We had the first 2 laps, it was just a nonstop lead change between 2 cars. The car that was leading, after several hours, tried to pass 2 cars around the same corner, but the car that was in the middle also was trying to pass a slower car. So they all got together and they all got taken out. So that was pretty dramatic that the overall leader was gone. Rain came and went. The rain, all the cars were on slicks on the starting grid because it had somewhat dried. And then the rain came just as they're starting pace laps. And some cars put on grooves, some cars put on wets, some stayed on slicks, and the ones that stayed on slicks after the pace lap, which at the Nürburgring is hilarious because the out lap for a pace lap's 20 minutes. By the time they got back, it was like a storm. So those guys all had to duck in. Like the pole sitter had to duck in before the race started to get his tires and come out further back. But anyway, it was awesome being there. It was such a cool atmosphere. The downside is at 11:30 at night, the fog was so thick the marshals couldn't see each other, which is a big problem when you're trying to marshal on a track that big. So they halted the race, and the Germans know their area, and they said right away, we'll look back at 7 to restart it. And then I had decided literally 10 minutes before the race got halted that I would stay there all night. My hotel was 45 minutes away, and everyone got on the shuttle and left but me. And I was like, this is gonna be so cool. I'm in the paddock. I got this cool venue to myself. I had a little meeting room with a couch and a TV right beside the track, and then they halted the race. So then I had a whole night to do nothing. And everyone left because they knew it was until 7. So all the race teams went to the hotels to get rare sleep during a 24-hour race. All the spectators went back to their campsites because why would they stay in the paddock? So I could walk around the paddock and it was like me and 4 people. It was pretty cool. I wish I'd done more walking, but I was getting some work done too. Mm-hmm. Anyway, and then 7 became 8. 8 became 9, and then by 1:30 they said we'll do some pace laps, and if we can't get the race started, we'll call it. And then at 3 p.m. they called it, an hour short. of the end time, and after only 7.5 hours of racing. And of course, where I was the place that was super foggy, which happened to be right beside the control tower where the helicopter lands for the medvac. And that was the bigger problem, was it couldn't land or take off. So if there was an incident, they couldn't do anything. So they said like they could do what they call code 60s, which you slow the cars down to 60 kilometers an hour, like 37 miles an hour, and they can only go that speed through there. And you could do that in the foggy areas because then they're slow enough, it's fine, and then let them go where there wasn't fog. But because of where the fog was, they couldn't do that. So and so anyway, once they called the race, of course, where I was became super bright and sunny, but you could literally see the fog had just moved down the track somewhere else. So it wasn't, yeah, it's unfortunate. I want to go back. It was so cool being there. It was weird when you first get there because I've been to lots of tracks in events, and it was like, oh, it's just like any big event. It's like I'm at Mosport or Laguna Seca, but then you have to keep reminding yourself, like, no, this is the Nurburgring. So, and the parties were epic.
Yeah, so you went to an historic race, but not the historic you probably expected.
Yeah, I'm already. Yeah, I want to go back again for sure. I need, not because this was short, but it'd be cool to see a full one. And like the year before, apparently it was sunny for 24 hours, which is never the case. So it's interesting. But all the different classes and seeing the speed gaps and stuff, it's pretty cool. 127 cars, I think, entered. So
wild.
Yeah, and the people I was there with, Hyundai, they went 1, 2, 3 in their class, even with the shortened race. So they had one car spin out, they had one car brush a wall and get an axle replaced, but the team got those all fixed up and back out.
Way to go.
All right, so moving on, our freelance contributor, Jeff Wilson, went to BC to drive the new Subaru Forester. This is the second time we've had someone drive it. We haven't driven it yet, but we will soon. And he came away with almost the exact same impressions as Chase did down in California. So it's interesting to see two different people, two different areas came to the same conclusion. The looks may look Fordish or whatever people are saying, and you look at the specs and you think, oh, there's not much, but it sounds like it's one of those, yeah, it's got a new different look and it's got the same engine, but it really sounds like they've refined it. Like, I just keep reading that it drives better, it's quieter, the interior seems more premium. So I'm really looking forward to try it, because I mean, the reasons I like them and a lot of people buy them is it's got great sight lines, it's got a good all-wheel drive system, it's super practical, it's not that bad on gas. Now if you make it nicer to drive inside and out and quieter, like those are sort of the detractors before. So so wait and see.
Yeah, we'll see soon enough.
Yeah, that'd be a good car to put against, I don't know, like a Nissan Rogue in August. Maybe we'll try to do that.
Huh? Yeah, you don't say.
All right. Oh, back to me. So when we were at the Midwest Automotive Media Association, I think I got that right. I don't know, some time ago. Everything's a blur. 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I drove 2 weeks. Okay. I drove the CLA 35 4MATIC. And the reason I really wanted to drive this car was my last CLA experience was the first gen. I did a 250 when it first came out, and then a 45 shortly after, which at the time made 300 and I don't think it was at the 355 yet. I think it was just over 300. And I really like that car. So this new gen has improved styling, I guess. Like it's got more contemporary. The size and shape is still sort of its drawback. It's called a coupe by Mercedes-Benz, even though it's 4 doors, but it's probably the most accurate use of the word coupe for a 4-door, because the rear seat headroom and legroom are minuscule.
Yes. I just had a weird thought there for a sec. Sorry to interrupt, but I wonder if there's more coupes on the market that are called coupe that aren't actually coupes than there are actual coupes. That's all.
Well, if you can SUVs, for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
BMW's got like 17 themselves. So yeah. So this rear seat is not the place for most adults. It's a great place though if you have adolescents or even younger teenagers. Like this is sort of a young family that's still got a lot of expenses with young kids. You're sort of stepping stone into Mercedes. This specific one, the 35, is the middle ground. So you have the 250 that makes about 221 horsepower. This one now makes 302, which is, it's funny. It's like, oh, it's the middle one, but 302 in a car this size and weight, like we go crazy about the Golf R, the Civic Type R and everything. Like this is the same. It's just because it's got the Mercedes badge. I don't think it gets the credit it deserves. And then also part of the problem is there's the 45, which makes 416 horsepower from a 2-liter. Not a hybrid, I mean, it's got a mild, but doesn't do much. Like that's insane. I remember when like 300 horsepower from a 2-liter was mind blowing. And now Mercedes is 416. And I haven't driven that car, but I've driven that engine, and it's crazy. Like, it's basically a race engine. And then the 250 is very sedate. So this is the nice middle ground. And this, with the 8-speed dual clutch, really feels like a posher, maybe Golf R, because it also has the dual clutch. Like, it has way more refinement than, say, an Elantra or a Civic Type R, but it's obviously not as sporty. But it's sort of for people who want performance, but I've kind of gotten old like me and want a little refinement. And inside, it really looks like a scaled down C-Class. Like, it's all the little details of the vents and everything. Like, they've transferred all the Mercedes-ness to it. It rides a little stiff, being a little car trying to be sporty. And like I said, the rear seat's kind of cramped, and the price is fairly high for what you get. It's more than a 235 Grand Coupe. It's more than an S3, but I mean, it's good though. If you really want a Mercedes in that class, there you go.
It is good. Yeah, they had it at the autocross there, because I was there with you at the spring rally, and there was some serious machinery on that autocross. There was a Kia EV6 GT, there was a Genesis G70, the Elantra N. And this, for me, was just as quick as all of them, which was really impressive. It's kind of a sleeper, which is a weird thing to say for an AMG Mercedes, but yeah.
Yeah. All right. And I think this finishes up our news and features. Back to Hyundai. So on that trip to the Nurburgring, the cool thing was we went to Frankfurt, and that is where Hyundai Motorsports had offices. A lot of people probably don't know that. It's not in Korea and it's not in the US. It's in Germany. And the whole motorsports and N brand and everything has always been about Germany. So they launched there. That's where the motorsport is. They started with a rally. When they decided to get into touring car, the TCR class, they also have a R&D facility that's literally beside the Nürburgring. I saw it when we left. It's like a block away, and there's a whole bunch of manufacturers in a row there. And yeah, they said during the tour, they went to Germany because they figured if we can succeed here, we can pretty much succeed anywhere, because you're going up against, Volkswagen's legendary performance, BMW M's, AMG. It's not necessarily in terms of, let's say, luxury and refinement, but just in performance. So it was cool because part of the tour, they had the original, I think it was 98 or maybe 99 Tiburon rally car that they helped co-develop with someone as front wheel drive. I remember it raced in the second class, and then they had their first real WRC. It was the Hyundai Accent with all-wheel drive and the big engine. And the reason I remember that is it entered very few races and didn't really do well, but it was in Gran Turismo. And I remember playing it and being like, Hyundai has a rally car? This is cool. And then, of course, after that, you jump to more modern when they got serious around 2016, 17. And they have all their different, well, not all of them, but a lot of the different ones. And now, anyone who watches WRC knows, they're a dominant force.
Yeah.
They're like Subaru Mitsubishi back in the 90s. Them and Toyota basically go back and forth, and then there's a couple Fords there. So that was really cool. And then we got to see the TCR stuff because they're also a dominant force worldwide there, and they make them for all sorts of different TCR classes. They don't all have the same regulations. So, and it's all a customer program. So they're selling them, which kind of gives their existence. And as we talked about last week, the Ioniq 5 TA is going to Pikes Peak. So that's their next thing. And that's a spinoff of, they were an eTCR, which is an all-electric TCR, but they were the only manufacturer, and I think one other that had full support. So the series folded, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to get a quick update on my Genesis Coupe. This week, I did nothing to the car except for I started to fix some things, specifically some engine codes. So we'll be back in a minute. eBay Motors is here for the ride. With the parts you need at the prices you want, and with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, they're guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. Hey everyone, back with another update on Project Genesis Coupe, and this time it's not so much an upgrade I'm doing to the car, but rather sorting out an old car and its problems. Anyone who's owned a car that's got a couple miles on it or many years on it probably has thrown an engine code or some other code over time. I've had many cars that have done that, and one of the greatest things you can get is a code reader. The reason being, it allows you to see what actual code the vehicle's throwing, and with older systems, you could go online and search what that code actually meant, and more modern systems will break it down to you exactly what's wrong. So I've gone ahead and got this. It's called the Fixed OBD2 scanner. I'm pretty sure it's fixed, it might be Fixed D, but fixed sounds more accurate. So what it is, this little package comes, it has a QR code on the back, and when you open it up inside, you'll find in the plastic is the actual OBD2 scanner that just plugs right into your car. And to get set up, it's pretty nice. You can either use the QR code on the back or the one that comes on this little insert, or you can just go on the website. But once you get it, it'll tell you how to start the install and set up for scanning codes on your car. So first up, you need to download the app onto your phone, which is very straightforward, and then you need to plug the system in and start to scan the car. So we're gonna go do that in 1 second. The nice thing about Fixed is there's also a premium account you can get that not only allows you to read and clear codes, it can actually hook you up with a mechanic locally to investigate and fix your car. You're basically sending the mechanic the codes your car is reading, so you know and they know, and both get to the problem right away, and you don't have to spend lots of extra money to either have them scan it or try to troubleshoot once the car is there. So the idea is that it saves you lots of money, and then you can also use the system to give you notifications on when things are upcoming, like tire rotations or oil changes or other maintenance, and it can also just track your vehicle history. For my purpose, I really just wanted to read codes and clear codes, so we're gonna go try to do that first and see how the system works. Okay, so we're now in the car, and I will open up the app, and it says the first thing I need to do is be near my car, which clearly I am, have my fixed sensor, which is just over here, and then I continue to install sensor. So now there's a little video here that shows you how to plug in your sensor, but I know how to do that. And it goes. All right, so the sensor is plugged in. I click the button, setting fixed with like my Bluetooth, okay. Make sure your engine is running when the sensor is plugged in. Okay, so let's turn it on. And you'll see I clearly have a check engine light currently turned on. So I'm now on, new sensor tap to setup. I click that. Ooh, what do I want to call my sensor name? It'll be Mike's Sensor. Continue. Okay, continue. Okay, it's installed, and I can tap here to scan. So if I tap, it's communicating. It's saying it can take up to 2 minutes. We'll see how long it takes to scan. It knows that I have a Genesis Coupe. It wants to know which trim, so I have the 2.0T. Submit. Year 2010. Yep, everything here looks right. Submit. All right, it's downloading. It's saying there's stored codes, and there is a moderate driving impact. So let's look at my stored codes. So first thing I will do is click this one, and it is a small leak detected in the evap system, something in the engine. So it's telling me this means that the fuel vapor is leaving your car. While the most common source of this is having your gas cap loose or off, it could also be a sign of other underlying problems. Saying I may not pass emissions. Saying here I can click to see the cost. I can have the AI mechanic help me learn more about this problem. I can try to find a repair shop, or I can even call the hotline. So there's other bits of data I can find too. So if I scroll down, it will let me know that it's been 423 kilometers since this light first went on, and nothing's been cleared off the car in over 8,000 kilometers. So if I click on the actual code itself, if you scroll down, it gives you all the details of what happened when the code was thrown. So looking at this, it was 9 degrees Celsius out, which is probably around 45 or so degrees Fahrenheit. The engine was basically idling and I wasn't moving. And I do remember when it was thrown, it was a rainy day. So that's good to know. If I had the premium subscription, I could then see the cost of what it would be by clicking that. Also, I could see results of what an emission test would be with this on. But the most important thing is I could find a repair shop. So if I click that, it knows my location, it's telling me all the repair shops nearby that are set up on the system. So that's great because not everyone has a mechanic they regularly go to, or more importantly, could have issues on the road and they need to find someone fast and nearby. Now, the thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna clear this engine code by clicking this button here. So clicking that is communicating, it's going to clear the code. And it says, fix has successfully reset the code on my Hyundai Genesis Coupe. Did the dash light turn off? So I say yes or no, and I go from there. So although it cleared the code, the light didn't go off. So I'm clicking here through the different menus to see why that happened. So first it tells me, did the light go off? And I said no. Then it asks what light's on and its engine. Now it's telling me if the engine was running, and it was, so saying stop engine. So I'm gonna stop the engine, but leave the key in and just before the ignition point. Engine key is off, key in pre-ignition. Done. Now I hit that button. It's communicating, it's talking, checking. Fix has successfully reset the coupe. So it's saying, did your dash engine turn off? Well, let's start it up and find out. Hey, and look at that, it is off. So I say yes. And now it's cleared. And the great thing is, if this code comes back on, I can see the details again. And if it comes back on maybe 2 more times, I'll take it somewhere to get looked at. I'm thinking it was just probably the old loose gas cap, or it's just an old car and there might have just been a temporary hiccup in one of the seals. So not only does this tool work, it's also quite handy at quickly seeing what's wrong. The best part is you don't have to be a mechanic to use it. There's very straightforward information, and depending on your comfort level in knowing your vehicle and what you want to do, you can do anything from see the code and immediately book an appointment, see the code, investigate it a bit more, clear the code like I did, or if you're really mechanically inclined, you might know exactly where the issue is and go fix it. With the premium package, I could even see, like I said, an estimate of how much it would cost and some other great features. So yeah, I'm really happy with this, and I'm hoping I don't have to use it again anytime soon. I'm hoping my engine light turns off, but if it doesn't, I'm ready to check it again. All right, so I got that code off. I haven't driven my car since. I will see if it stays off. If it keeps coming back, it's just a evap code, so it could just be a corrosion around my gas cap. It could be O2 sensor going, but we'll see how much I want to dig into it later. Hopefully just to come back. So moving on to the news of the week, the top news, we're on a rally theme here, is Toyota is thinking about getting a Celica or Celica, depending on how you want to say it, brand back. My giant worry, I'm sure, is the same as everybody in the world. Will it be an SUV?
Oh, I thought you were gonna say like, oh, will it be electrified? I'm like, well, it's Toyota, so probably. But yeah, please don't make it an SUV, Toyota. You have 9 of them.
It's going to be the 2-door version of the Corolla Cross, the Celica Cross.
That would be on brand, wouldn't it?
Now, in fairness, if they did that and they put the GR Corolla's engine in it, cool. I'm fully on board for a 2-door Corolla Cross with a GR Corolla engine in it.
True. Yeah, that would be and
they can enter rally again.
Either transmission, right? Like throw the automatic in there that's just debuted on the Yaris elsewhere, or the manual. I mean, that would be fun. That'd be really cool.
I'm a terrible automotive commentator, reviewer, whatever. I should know this better, but I know WRC has some big regulation changes coming, like we're going to talk about with F1 in a little bit. So maybe Toyota is looking at getting back. I know they're trying to make the regulations more manufacturer friendly because they're in the same boat as what we talked about Hyundai a second ago, where it's Hyundai and Toyota, and Ford offers support to a couple customer teams, and that's it right now. So maybe, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know where it would fit in their current sporty lineup, but.
And on to Lamborghini. So we talked about that 800 plus horsepower engine last week. Well, now apparently it's 900 horsepower. They found 100 horsepower in a week. I mean, who knows what the story is between that story and this story, but if the Huracan's replacement makes 900 horsepower, all right. I'm not going to say no. I
don't know where to start. I mean, nothing. I mean, now we have I'm not even going to try to pronounce it because I screw it up every time, but the new flagship that replaced the Aventador.
Oh, yeah.
It has 1,000 horsepower, so I guess there's room. But do we not remember the time when a TVR boss said no to an 800 horsepower road car because they were like, it's just too much? And I get the tire tech has definitely evolved in a quarter century. But
in fairness, that was like a 2,000 pound race car basically for the streets.
Yes.
This is a big heavy all-wheel drive, but no, I get it. Like I remember when the Aventador and the Huracan were brought out together, and they kept being Lamborghini. Like every year or two, they'd bring in an LP, something else with more power, and then at one point, the Huracan had passed where the Aventador used to start. It was like just getting crazy. Now their entry level is going to have like 900 horsepower. I remember when the Bugatti Veyron came out at 986 or whatever, and people were like, "Oh my god, like how's that possible?"
Yeah, it's
sorry, go on.
I was just going to say inflation is real in every way.
And we'll tie right into the next story of Corvette has given another teaser for their ZR1, and it's clearly boosted, probably turbos. It sounds like more than a supercharger, but they're another one. Like I remember when the C6 Z06 came out, and it had 620 something horsepower. We're all like, wait, what? And then the ZR1, sorry, it's 636. And then the C7 Z06 had the 650, which was more than the old ZR1. You're like, well, what's the ZR1 going to be at? And then they're like 755. Here you go. So I know the current Z06 makes crazy power with that flat plane NA, but I really have a feeling that this is going to be well north of 800. It just has to be the way they go, but I think it's going to be over 9, and I think they'll eventually hit the 1,000. Like I think there's going to be 1,000 horsepower Corvette, and me personally, like whatever they're doing to this, then just throw the E-Ray front motor on it, and then there's your 1,000 horsepower. I mean, maybe the ZR1's going to have that anyway. I mean, it makes sense. It'd give you more traction.
Yeah. It's you mentioned the C6 ZR1 and its horsepower rating being so absurd, and now C8 Z06 makes more power with a liter less displacement and no supercharger.
Well, like you said, when it came out, it was just like even the C6 ZR1. You're just like, holy cow! I remember when the C6 Z06 came with the 505. That seemed crazy. But when it came out with that supercharger, like, okay, this is it. Like, you can't get more than this. And the Viper was up around there too. And then a couple years later, Dodge is like, hey, you want more power and a charger? Here you go. And then electric cars started coming on the scene. So
yes,
the Corvette's been a master for a long time of getting the most power down, I think, per horsepower. Porsche's really good at it too. To just having two wheels is what I'm getting at. Like not all-wheel drive, but
I see.
They gotta be getting to the point where physics can't be overcome. Like the ZR1 getting 755 to the ground and being so quick was pretty impressive.
Yeah, I'm inclined to think that they're probably gonna put the E-Ray motor in this. You'd expect just for help. But I'm curious because if it's turbocharged and it's also that flat plane, how's it like the compression ratio compared with turbocharging, and it revs so high? I'm so fascinated to see what this is. Like, just I can't wait.
It's going to be called Turbo Plane. I'm calling it now. That's what I'd call it. And speaking of electricity, Jeep said there will never be a Wrangler EV, which makes sense, and I get, but I think there's a big but. They'll just put the EV in a Wrangler body and call it something else. They're just saying they're never going to call it Wrangler EV. They'll be like, oh, that's our, I don't know, E-Rubicon or something. It'll just be a Wrangler electric meter. That's our E-Hera. Like,
Well, they have the Recon coming out soon, and I mean, I know the Recon isn't exactly a Wrangler, but it's definitely what any 3-year-old draws if you say Jeep.
Well, and I think that's it with that and the Wagoneer S that you saw and everything. Like they're gonna cover the electric, and the Wrangler makes sense to never put the electric in because this is one of the vehicles that does go way off the grid consistently. So it kind of makes sense. The E-Hybrid, the 4xe that it has, makes sense because you can use the gas engine again. But it's basically saying like, I don't know. You're just covering something that was never going to happen.
Yeah.
We're on a definite electric theme right now. So Ford unveiled their new Ford Lightning that's going to attack Pikes Peak. And it came like a day or two after Hyundai showed the Ioniq 5 NTA. This is going for the open record, which they already have from that van last year. And you look at it, like the wing's ridiculous and the arrow, it's like
This is
pickup-ish shape.
Yeah, this is just the van, just with a different body.
Exactly. It's like they cut the back of the van off. Yeah, it's like they just rebodied the van and probably up the boost.
And don't
They're
get me
going
wrong,
up Pikes. So yeah, go on.
it looks incredible.
It looks like a Lightning. Like they did a good job of making it look like a Lightning if there is such thing as a single cab Lightning, because there isn't. But the speeds are going up now, Pikes Peak. I know it's all asphalt, so it's very different, but it's like insane. Like I look what the van did last year, I'm like, you're gonna go faster. Like I remember when Monster was taking those Escuda Suzuki's up with crazy wings, and that was when it was still half asphalt and half dirt. The times he put down, you just be like, that's insane. And then the EVs came and laughed at those times because they don't have to worry about altitude.
Yeah, I think when Loeb went up there in that crazy, it was a Peugeot, I want to say. It was like
it was like based on the rally car.
Yeah, it was like one of the first years that it was fully paved, and it was like, okay, like this is it. Like no one's gonna beat that. And then every year it's like, oh crap, someone beat it by a lot.
I'm trying to think. I remember Mitsubishi was really electric. I think Hyundai might have been the first that went up with that crazy EV thing they made that looked like a little formula car kind of, but for Pikes Peak. But once the EV started going up, you could see like you're never going to beat an EV on that course because it doesn't have to worry about compression. You don't have to worry about thinning oxygen at the top. You just keep making electric power. But anyway, I love watching this if I can. Streams are getting harder and harder to find. There seems to be more manufacturer attention, so maybe people will start to get TV rates for it again, because it's just entertaining, and all the different classes and whatnot. It's sort of like the Nurburgring 24. You have the serious guys, and you have like the guy who put a car together in his garage,
which is cool. Yeah, I love it. A friend is moving near there soon, like next month, and so I'm really hoping that somehow I can, coordinate a visit to Pikes Peak maybe next summer.
Yeah, it sounds like they're going to be just shy of this year's, but can go next year's. Yeah, June's such a great month. Nurburgring, Le Mans, Pikes Peak, a lot of fun stuff. Locally for us, the
Canadian Grand Prix.
Well, Monaco too, if you care about that. I know it's the world's worst race, but it's got all that history and prestige. That's a whole nother topic. That's like a topic for F1, which we're going to talk about in a second. All right, well, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to combine our special guest and F1 together, because Colum Wood's going to come because we now know more of all the crazy changes coming to F1 in 2026, which will be potentially one of its biggest years, not only with the big changes, but all the manufacturers that are planning to come in. So we'll be back in a couple minutes. eBay Motors is here for the ride. Okay, everyone, let's take a minute and talk about the one that got away. The vehicle you once owned and for whatever reason had to get rid of, and to this day fully regret ever doing so. For me, it's my Subaru SVX. It was a 1997 model, which was one of the last years it was ever sold here. It was black on the outside and it had the beige leather and suede interior. It was in amazing condition for its age because it was just a one-owner vehicle. The interior was near flawless. The paint was pretty good considering it was about a 20-year-old car when I got it. I just loved everything about it. I loved the quirkiness because I love oddball cars. I love the window within the window, the power button on the gear shifter, the way the dash was laid out and you could hide the radio behind the fake wood panel. The flat six was just so smooth and it was all-wheel drive, and although it wasn't overly quick, it still had enough power. The problem was, within a year of buying that car, I ended up selling it because I got a great deal on another vehicle. And to this day, I regret doing so. Part of the reason I sold it was, although it was in great shape, it wasn't perfect and there were things that needed to be fixed, like the air conditioner, reservoir, some bearings, and other bits. And back then there was no eBay guaranteed fit program, so finding parts for such a rare 20-year-old car was not easy. Luckily, I sold it to someone who not only cared for it, but took the time to fix it up, and every once in a while I do get to still see it, and I still regret ever getting rid of it. I am constantly online looking for a new SVX because now I have a system that I can find parts for it, but I haven't come across one that's both in the right condition and the right price range. With over 122 million parts, you can make sure your number one ride or die stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof racks, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber and not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. Welcome back. This week, we are combining sort of two segments in one. Colum Wood is going to join us as a special guest who usually comes for F1, but that's because there is a lot to talk about this week. Some big news dropped. Colum, take it away.
Thanks, Mike. Kyle, good to see you. I see you've got the little photo there in the square of the look of the new 2026 Formula One cars. So they definitely actually look different. I mean, maybe to the untrained eye it doesn't, but to me it looks like F1 cars of years gone by when they had these much smaller front wings. So F1 came up with this huge swath of changes. This is going to be sort of the dramatic change for the series that could, turn everything upside down, right? So anybody who was a big leader in the industry could not be, because somebody might sort of hack these rules the right way, I guess. So I can run you through really quickly some of the big changes here. So the cars are supposed to be 30 kilos lighter, which is 55 pounds or something like that. So not huge, but it's something. They're 200 millimeters shorter, 100 millimeters narrower. They actually run much narrower tires, or they will. And I guess all of this creates apparently 30% less downforce and make them a lot more nimble and sort of create closer racing, which is, I think, what we all want. So we'll see if that happens. The F1 has tried for years to make the cars, better competing against each other, better able to follow, able to pass. We'll see if they hit it right this time. So
yeah, I was watching the Braun GP documentary a couple months ago.
Oh yeah, and
this, like I said, sometimes people just hit it, or they find a loophole in the regulations. The car they're making this big deal about, it's so much smaller, and they had it side by side, and it's like saying, well, that Suburban's an inch shorter than the old Suburban. It's still a giant F1 car, but there is a big reduction in downforce, so mechanical grip will matter more. But also, if a team can nail the new powertrain, which I'm sure you'll get into, that could be a huge advantage.
Yeah. So that powertrain is huge. So they're actually decreasing the power from what I believe is still, it's going to be the 1.8 V6 turbos. So the gas input is actually, from now currently, it's something like 80% of the total power output. Will be down to about 50% of the total power output. And then the electric portion is going to be a full 50%. So now it's only there's just a little bit of extra electricity, but in the future, it's going to be basically a 50-50 split. So they'll see way more. And that's actually going to play into, there's crazy changes for aerodynamics. So I mentioned a little bit before, but they're actually getting, this is funny. They say they're getting rid of DRS. So you're like, so that no more flap in the wing. No, that's not true. There will actually still be flaps in the rear wing that open, and there'll actually be flaps in the front wing that open as well. But it's just more that there's not going to be like a DRS zone. You're not going to be able to just, when you're up within a second, it's basically going to be that from how I read the regulations is going to be that it will be every, like basically the straightaways, it will automatically, or you'll have the chance to automatically do it, so that the drivers can, they don't have to be within a certain time. They can basically flip that open. So they get more downforce on the corners, less downforce on the straights, so they can go faster, and they can take advantage of this all the time. And then in place of that, with this electric, sort of heavily increased electric powertrain, they're actually going to basically allow for like a push to pass button. So you'll get like an extra wallop of electricity. And they have a name for it. Oh, it's the manual override mode, or as everyone says, the terrible acronym will be MOM. So it's like, Lando Norris is using his mom to help pass Sergio Perez. I don't know. Like it's a weird. There's no way it's not going to sound strange. So
yeah, the mom jokes write themselves. That's what I'm curious to see how it all turns out, because you just expect that would just be like the turbo gives you a little more boost. But if it's coming from electricity, what if you haven't harvested enough electricity? Is your mom not useful anymore? It's all things we're gonna have to find out. And with so much more reliability on the electricity, I'm wondering if the engines will generate more power to it regularly, or if there's just going to be way more harvesting going on around the track, because that always kind of changed things.
It does. So that's an interesting. One of the things I was going to touch on is that So this is funny how this all came to be. It sounds like it's all in the sort of the creation of better performance, better sport, right? But there's a piece of this that is actually driven by the efficiency standpoint. So they basically said, look, we want to have more electricity. We want to make this more sort of technologically focused. And then to do that, they removed all the aerodynamics. Sorry, actually, to correct myself, the aerodynamics are removed because if you have this much larger battery pack and more electricity, you need to be able to harvest a lot more power during a lap. So currently they'll be able to, for 2026, they'll be able to regenerate twice as much electricity around a lap. Now, the only way to do that is to elongate the braking zones. So the way to make the braking zones much longer is by reducing the natural drag of all those crazy aero effects they have. So you're basically stretching it out and then using that period. So, that sounds a bit contrived again to me. But I think maybe one of the most interesting things will be is that, at least for the first couple races, you anticipate with any big rule change, a lot more unreliability. And that always makes for more fun, right? Like it just, throw the deck in the air and anything can happen. If you look back at the history of the sport and seeing the years where they make these huge changes, and there was one I watched recently, like I love watching the old races, and it was like 08 or 09, and they made big changes. And like the first race of the year, Australia, there was like, I don't know, like 12 out of 24 cars finished because half of them just broke. And it's like, you never know. That makes things interesting. So,
oh yeah, because everyone's pushing the edge in sort of a new frontier. The engine not super changing, it probably won't be as bad. It's not like when they went to the V6 turbos, but yeah, it's funny how it feels like way back in the day they'd make little changes here and there to make things safer or more competitive, and now they're kind of set on every couple of years. Let's completely turn the cars upside down so we can sort of reset and get people interested. It's like it's almost for the fans now they're doing it.
I think so. Sorry, Kyle.
Oh, I was just gonna say it's weirdly kind of like production cars with their schedules. It's like every 6 years they're like, hey, we have a new one.
I agree, and I think they do it to shuffle the deck, because otherwise you wind up in a situation where someone is just too dominant, and that's not good for anybody, right? Like it makes the top teams lethargic, and it's so hard to get into F1, as we've seen with Andretti, they just, I think people would be reluctant to try unless there are these times. So it's a time to get the new brands in. Like they said, one of the in 2026, we'll see Audi, which we've never seen before. We'll see Ford coming back with Red Bull. There's, I think that's one of the big sort of hats. They're one of the big things that Formula One is celebrating with these new rules is that they will have 6 engine manufacturers in the series then, compared to what, like 3 or sort of 4 right now. So
yeah, 3.5. But I'm sort of I'll believe it when I see it. They say there's going to be 6. And like they're all committing, but will Renault really still be there? Will Ford actually build a new engine and not just, slap their label on a Red Bull designs? I don't know. We'll have to see. And then Cadillac could be a 7th if Andretti is ever allowed in. But watch some random team nail the formula. Like the first race of the season, Haas is the best team out there or something.
It's possible, right? It's possible. There's it was just reminding me. There is a crazy rumor floating around with this whole 2026 regulations thing, and that's I can't even remember the guy's name, but there's basically someone who leaked all these rules just like a couple days ago, all these new regulations. So therefore, you assume that he actually knows what he's talking about. I don't know, was on Twitter or whatever. Basically, so that sort of gives him some credibility. He also claims that not all the teams have actually signed off on this new rules package, and that 2 of them have not signed off, and they are threatening to walk from Formula One if they don't get some changes. And we don't really know what those changes are. Apparently, maybe they're tied to safety. I'm not really sure. But I was reading a very long Reddit thread about it today, and there's a lot of confusion there. Guys saying that it's because what I mentioned before about how they were worried that it was if these sort of DRS or these the active aerodynamics on the car are not controlled by the driver, that could be a safety issue. They were mentioning, you remember the Ericsson crash from like a couple of years back where his DRS stayed open and he went into a braking zone and he just, it was a Monza or something, just slammed into the wall. I can't remember the track, but it was bad. But I was reading that, and that prompted me to go back and look at the regulations again. And the regulations clearly say, and so does the Formula One website, that this is like always a driver enabled feature. So, so I don't know where that's coming from, but the rumor maybe has some credence to it. Maybe who knows? Maybe it's Renault or Alpine just trying to do anything they can to, get some credibility back, or try and weasel their way out of Formula One because they're sick of paying for losing cars. So
it's like what was it, FOTA, I think they were called, like 15 years ago, when they were all ready to walk, and then like last minute Bernie and Max were able to keep them around. But it's sort of like that all over again.
Yeah. There are crazy stories from the past in F1 of like I can't, it was the South African Grand Prix. It was like in the 70s, maybe the 80s, where basically the FIA determined that they wanted to have like a new point system for the license, but basically decided to announce this like the day of free practice one, on like the Friday of the race, of the first start of the year. And basically all the drivers in unison were like, not doing it. And then they refused to even participate. And then they all left together on a bus. Like the drivers left their teams all together, and they went back to the hotel, and there was like this standoff. And I think they maybe ended up racing just the Sunday race. I don't know. It's a crazy story. But there are instances in the past where sometimes these rule changes have gotten very political with everybody involved. So
yeah, these ones don't sound extreme. Like
no.
Like they're changing the engine cylinders or whatnot. I'm curious who the teams are too, if that rumor's true. But back to the DRS, how you're saying like stuck open. It was Max, I think, last year where his wouldn't open, and he couldn't catch up. So imagine, I mean, anything can break on a car, but if that breaks on someone's car early and they can't get DRS, or the opposite, it's always open, that can just ruin your race. So it'd be interesting.
Yeah, or we know maybe it's no different than what it currently is, but I was thinking about the slightest damage to one of those front splitters now, front wings, and your race is toast. I mean, we've seen instances in the past where they get a little damage and they keep going, right? But basically, if it's critical to your race and like straight line speed, any damage at all will mean you have to go into the pits to put a new front wing on, which maybe you have to think would mean the front wing would take longer to install as well. But it also just feels like then you're just going to wind up in a situation where the drivers are so afraid of getting into a collision with the others that they won't. So then K-Mag will show up and like muscle everybody out of the way, and he'll win every race. Maybe.
I'm sure when they put those cones on, they'll be like plug, like actuator that just does it automatically, so you don't have to like physically plug something in. But on the flip side, since these cars make less downforce, damaging your wing maybe won't be as dramatic because you didn't have much up there to begin with. Who knows?
Good point. It will, I'm sure, impact them less. So they're saying the whole idea is it's supposed to be a little bit more on actual driver skill. I think going to smaller cars is better. Like if you watch some of the old races, it's crazy. Like go back. Yeah, I know. But go back to like 2009 and watch a race, and like the speeds at which they look like they're driving are much more impressive. Like it's like they look faster, even though they're not. And it's just because the nimbleness of how the cars move, right? So there is something.
And the sound.
Yeah, also true. There is something to that, right? So that's actually something no one has mentioned on this, and I'm curious if it's 50% electricity, are we going to have really diminished engine sounds or not? I don't know. I'm sure they could make them loud no matter what, right? But there's been this talk about how could they increase the sort of fan engagement through louder engines again, and I think this has to be going the opposite direction. You have to think that a 50% electric F1 car is going to be 50% quieter or something like that.
Well, now we'll get more electric noise.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah, not quite the same.
It's not, but it could be cool. We'll see.
Yeah,
they're getting one step closer to just taking over Formula E. I mean, right now they don't refuel on the race, so when they can get to the point where you could load a battery up for an entire race, they'll go electric, and then they should be allowed to make whatever noise they want. You can like get like a speaker, sort of like or like an air tube, like the new Charger has, and like I want to sound like a V12 from the 60s. I want to sound like a V8 from the 70s. You could just
think of the advertising opportunities there. If the automaker has a new car coming, they're like, well, here's the sound of our latest car, unless it's also an EV, and then I guess
No, that's how it works. Is you make your F1 car sound a certain way, and then you sell the road car and say, and it sounds just like our F1 car.
Except it's going to be a subscription service.
Yes.
You can subscribe to make your Mercedes C35 or whatever sound like something more outrageous.
Yeah.
For free, you get Formula 3. For $9.99, you get Formula 2, and for $19.99, Formula 1.
No, for free, you actually just get the air guns, and you have to pay to not get that sound all the time.
When you accelerate, whoop, whoop, whoop.
Yeah.
I want to, having been there, we'll talked about it earlier. I want that Nurburgring sound when you enter the pits. I want my car just to sound like that as I'm driving around, that weird siren.
Oh, yeah.
It was really cool being there and hearing it go off in person. I was like, oh my God, the siren I've heard in like racing games for a decade.
Yeah, it's neat that they do that, right? I was with somebody once and they were like, because they're watching and they're like, what's that sound? I'm like, that is, and if you watch again, funny, older Formula One races, it's literally a dude with a whistle. Like there on the side of the track, just like blowing the whistle. I'm like, I think that's somebody's job. Every time there's a car enters the pits. But I guess, you got to make sure people don't get hit by a car, even in the pits. So
I'm absolutely amazed at something as big as like the 24-hour Nurburgring that people aren't hit by cars in the paddock, because there's just thousands of people walking between haulers, and there's people driving their race cars and vans and towing other things. They're just like beep, 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 but they don't slow down. You got to get out of the way.
Yeah. The Germans are excellent for that. Like I love their system. It's like a rules-based system of, it's like, these are the rules and you follow them or else things go poorly, versus like the Western, North American, very American ideal of like, well, I'm going to do what I like and I'm going to sue you if things go wrong. It's like, I remember it was one of the first times I think I ever went to Europe, and it wasn't Germany, it was in Belgium. But my colleague I work with, we were going to. He's like, "Oh, I have something cool to show you," and I was new to a lot of this stuff at the time, and we literally showed up at Spa, and he was just like, "Here, there's like a gate." It was like just a regular. They were running like old timer cars. It was just like a fun series, and it was open. Like you didn't have to pay anything. You just walk in through the gate and check it out and wander around, and you could walk into the pits. The pits were open. You could walk across onto the pit wall. So like across the hot pits. I mean, it's not like, it wasn't DTM or something. It was, and then you could walk out and have a look. And I was like, this is crazy. And he just said, it's your responsibility. Like you look when you walk across those hot pits and make sure that nothing's going on. I mean, again, it was 15 years ago or something, but I was still really shocked that I'm like, this is a lot of access for somebody who maybe shouldn't have it. So,
yeah,
neat.
All right. Well, do you have any other F1 rumors before we let you go?
Not rumors, but I guess on the contract side of things, all the drivers, I figure it's worth an update of. So Sergio Perez signed for another 2 years at Red Bull, which I will admit I was a little surprised. I don't know about you guys. Yeah, it seems like it's weird, right? He has done some amazing things over the years, but there's kind of like the two sides of Sergio Perez, right? There's the, like, we've seen the defending like crazy to help out Max, and that's actually worked really well. He's been really good at it. But then other times, he's just been so far off. And I think we're seeing now with that car maybe not being the dominant force it has been, that like if Max is struggling to keep up with the rest of the team, with the other crews, that Sergio's nowhere. He was in like 10th or 11th. I mean, it's just, that will hurt them long term, right? They need a second gunner to help, if they want to finish out this year on top. I think they're going to need a very competent second gunner. And I don't know if Perez is that. So
the surprise is, like you said, 2 years, because that means you're committing him to the new regulations. You're not just getting through the current car and then, maybe trying something different. So
yeah. I mean, the reality is they can always buy him out, do some if they want to, right? That's always possible. Or maybe there's some other clause in there that allows them to move him around. I'm not sure. But I think what's funny, I saw somewhere else that I guess Helmut Marko there said that Yuki Tsunoda was something like he was safe at RB. So looks like he'll be back. So maybe the most interesting thing, because first of all, I'm kind of unimpressed by how all these driver market changes are going. I thought we'd see like crazy changes, and other than Hamilton leaving, it hasn't been all that exciting. So I'm just like, okay, that's odd. And then that makes me think, though, the exciting piece here is, well, where the heck is Carlos Sainz going to go? He's very quickly running out of options.
Williams.
And well, that's the rumor, and that's so crazy.
Sorry, I was gonna say, like we said on this weeks ago, maybe even a month ago, when Albon re-signed multi-year, I said they have something they're planning to do, because why would Alex stay there with the promise he shows? So maybe this is all part of the plan. They're going to get Sainz, and it's like some teams do. They've given up on this car completely, but they're already working on 26, and they want to make a full assault when that car comes out.
Yeah, it's possible. Like if the Mercedes engine is a killer again, then anybody who's got their engines is going to be a top performer. So, and who knows? Maybe all the craziest rumors will be true, and Verstappen will wind up at Mercedes, and maybe Sainz will then move to Red Bull. Then I don't know. It's weird. I thought for sure Sainz would be somewhere from now. I don't know if it's maybe he has some master plan we don't know about, but it seems I worry for his career, put it that way, because I just feel like you wind up at one of those backmarker teams, and even if you do great, you're not going to be a superhero, right? Like you'd have to be like blow them out of the water exceptional to even then move back up into a high team. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. When this airs, the Canadian Grand Prix will have already happened. So everyone will know what happened, but we don't right now. So I'm looking forward to it. It's usually a decent race, especially if weather comes through, and there's a lot of weather planned this whole weekend. So
there is lots of rain. Always, any Formula One race with rain is a great race. Like it's not even a good race. It's generally a great race. So I'm very excited.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Colin.
All right. So a look ahead. Kyle and I have been on a lot of trips lately. None of that's planned next week, so we can take a little break finally.
Yes. I should probably at least spend a minute. I mentioned it earlier. I'm just going to spend a quick minute, Mike, talking about what I was doing this week. It's not what's next. It's what just happened. I was in just outside of Montreal with the Automobile Journalists Association of Canada, helping run Eco Run, which is a yearly challenge with all the most efficient vehicles. Not all of them. The latest and greatest efficient vehicles from a bunch of different manufacturers. Previous years, we did a big road trip, and everyone was scored on how efficient they were. This year, we decided to change the whole format up, and we introduced some fun activities. We had a 1% challenge where you had to see how far you could go on a single percent of battery charge in an EV. My partner and I won that one. We went 7.9 kilometers, so just about 5 miles on a single percent of charge in a Kona EV.
Interesting. So would you just wait till it clicks down and then start at that point?
Yeah. So we actually drove with everything on, like cooling, cooled seats, heated steering wheel, aircon on max, and we were just waiting over the trip reset. And as soon as it ticked down, we start the trip, we turn off everything, and then we just saw how far we could go. So hypothetically, it's rated at 260 miles officially. You can do 500 miles if you base it on our 1%.
You did it wrong. You should have driven to the top of Mount Tremblant and then started from there. Just all pure downhill regen.
I'd actually still be going.
Yeah. And then when you got back, you picked up the GV7D electrified, and I have the Cadillac Lyric, and the plan was to get together and do this great big comparison, but weather has not been our friend, or timing. We hope to still do it over the weekend. That's just how dedicated we are. But
it's true.
Yeah, if not, I've been enjoying the Lyric. It's one of those cars, like, I expect it to be good. It's a Cadillac and it's electric, but it's better than I expected. I'll have the full review, and I've got a video on the Super Cruise, which is really cool. But the only thing I'll say is they made it drive so much like a regular vehicle. And I don't mean it's sporty or anything like that. It's just when you take a corner and get on the accelerator, or just when you're doing transitions, it feels like the distribution of power and whatnot, and the linear sort of curve of power. They've just really got it good. Some EVs feel so artificial behind the wheel, and this just feels like a Cadillac that's dead quiet. So good for them.
Yeah, I'm excited to get in because I only drove it very briefly last year. And actually, I drove the Genesis in Montreal earlier this week, so I'm pretty familiar with it at this point. But it's good to be back in it, and I look forward to us hopefully swapping and getting some time with both vehicles on the weekend.
Sounds like if I give you the car, you can just do the whole comparison by yourself. So good, done. It's Kyle's comparison.
There we go.
So the next week, we have two very different vehicles. Undecided how we're going to get them and drive them, but we have the Lyric's little sibling, the Chevrolet Blazer EV, and a Porsche Panamera. Do you know what trim it is or version?
It is the 4S, which I believe is the entry point now. I don't think they sell a rear drive one definitely not in Canada, but I'm not sure about the US. But yeah, it's one of the lower trims, but it was redone pretty significantly for this model year. So we'll see what it's all about.
You just remind me of a funny story. This is quite a few years ago. Whenever I was talking cars, because that's like my life. And yeah, someone was talking about a 911 and they kept talking about they went for a ride in 911 4s. And I was like, and they were like kind of pronouncing it like a Z. They said 4s. And I'm like, what's an 911 4s? And he goes, it's on the back. It's like a 4 and an S. And it's like, no, that's the 4S. That's not a 4s.
Maybe they just really like Forza Motorsport.
Yeah, maybe. That's what I was thinking. Like, is this like a Forza version? I don't remember Porsche really getting involved in that. But anyway, this has taken up enough time of our time and your time listening. So we'll be back next week. We do have a special guest that, as long as it all works out, really ties into the Nurburgring 24. So make sure you come back next week. It'll be very exciting.
Yes. So this has been the Auto Guide Show, brought to you by eBay Motors, and we'll see you all next week.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. Your elbow grease, fresh installs, and a whole lot of love transformed 100,000 miles and a body full of rust into a driveway entirely its own. Brake kits, LED headlights, whatever you need, eBay Motors has it. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply.